don't dilute your credibility. Try not to use multiple domain names and subdomain names. So let's say, well, our domain name is newmedia.org, but let's say we were starting a campaign to promote something else, maybe a piece of software that we made. So we'll call it XYZ software. So where do we point people to with our press releases? A lot of companies, what they would do is they would set up a separate domain name, and which would take you right to that specific content or software or functionality, right? But what happens when you do that? You are promoting links to a separate domain name. What does that do? So I'm talking about diluting your domain name. So if I was pointing to XYZ software, then that's a lost opportunity to point people to newmedia.org/XYZ software, because you're building credibility for this separate software. Now, if you plan on keeping the separate domain name and you have a specific purpose for building a separate web property, then that's fine. But if this is just a promotion or for one piece of content that you're not going to update too much, then I would suggest don't create a separate domain name for it. Okay, so now that we've talked about building credibility, let's talk about content. Content is king. There are many companies out there who have a very high page rank because, maybe they're a Fortune 100 company or something like that, and just lots of people are linking to them because they do business with them, right? But if they are not appearing at the top of the search engines, there's a reason. And the reason is they don't have the right content, or they don't have much content, and they don't have strategic content. And we're going to talk more about that right now. So if we take a look at this website, we're back to visitnc.com. We look at their website. It is full of content, lots of text, and we'll talk about their navigation later, why that's important. But they have a lot of in-depth content, which is fantastic, because the more content they have, especially related to their topic, North Carolina, the more chances of someone bumping into them in Google. Okay, so now that we've determined we need content, we need to organize content strategically and into keyword buckets. And we'll talk about the keyword research later to find out what people are finding in Google, but you need to organize the content strategically. Also, creating a sitemap. You should create a sitemap for your website, and this will ensure that the web crawlers find all the main sections of your website. So you want to know which pages of your sites are indexed with Google. This is what you do. The same thing we did with finding out how many people are linking to your site. You're going to go to Google, and you're going to type in site : your domain name. What you're going to find is how many pages that Google actually indexed for you. Are all of your pages showing up in Google? And if they're not, you have to ask yourself why. Do you have links that are showing people where all the pages are? Because they start at the front page and they carry through to find everything. So that's why a sitemap is key. So this way you can ensure that everything is being found by Google. So you'll see that this page has 150,000 results. Okay. Content generation. The most common mistake that people make when attempting SEO is counting words. You should not do this. You should focus on creating content that is truly useful. Focus on creating content that people will want to link to. If you focus on counting words and search engine manipulations, most likely the search engines are going to notice. So one of the key tips I tell people at first, and it's really hard to think this way, is forget making money just for now. If you focus on creating valuable, useful content for people, then the traffic will follow and the money will follow later. Okay? So if you just think about your audience, let's say that you had a website for rental cars, right? And you had all the different type of cars that are listed. You can get mid-size, you can get a luxury vehicle. That's great. But what if you provided additional information like, let's say someone wanted to rent a Land Rover, okay? Why not take all the content that you can find about what the Land Rover is, the interior, things like that. So when somebody is searching your site or searching Google for renting a Land Rover, say in North Carolina or New York City, they will bump into your information. Why? Because you're just providing valuable, useful information, and it didn't cost you anything except for a little bit of time and thought. So the question then is, can you add content easily? So on the phone right now, we have a lot of people who have, from large companies and a lot of people from small companies. So most large companies have a content management system, but for smaller companies, what I hear a lot is that, we paid someone to create our website, and I can't really, it's not that hard, and it gets expensive to ask someone to update our website. Well, let me tell you something. There are very inexpensive content management systems out there that when you have someone make your website or redo your website, if you ask for an inexpensive content management system, then what that enables you to do is that enables you to add content without being a programmer. You go to a specific URL, you log in, you add articles, and you could even do it from your BlackBerry if you're in the airport. You can add a press release to your site if you needed to. So it's very important that you be able to have the freedom to add content easily without being dependent on anyone else. So let's talk about a domain name, choosing a domain name. A couple of tips I have. Use your keywords in the domain name if you know what they are. Don't use hyphens, and use as few characters as possible. So for us, it's great. We have newmedia.org, right? So when people type in new media, we show at the top of the organic search results. So that's fantastic. So if you were starting a company from scratch, what you would want to think of is this. What would people type in the search engines to find my products? And then what you would do is, I'll show you the tool later, but you can actually search what keywords are being typed into Google. Say it was for luxury pens. If you type in pens, you'll be able to find out what the top typed in words into Google are for pens, and then that might help you determine what your domain name should be. So maybe it's luxury pens are being typed into Google, and maybe luxurypens.com is available when you go to the domain name registrar. You would want to try and do that because there's a number of things that are looked at, even outside of content, that you might not realize as far as the search engines. Also, the age of the domain name. The older a domain name is, the more weight the search engines place on it. Some sites appear high in search engines because they have a number of sites linking and they've been around for a long time. And I was online the other day and I keep on getting this one result that is so outdated it's unbelievable. But so many sites are linking to it, they haven't touched it in years. So age of the domain name. So you want to know the age of your domain name, right? So if you're curious about that, you can go to any domain name registrar. So I went to GoDaddy, and at the bottom of the page, you'll see something called Who Is. It'll be on all the domain name registrars. So if you went to GoDaddy, went to the bottom of the page and clicked on Who Is, and typed in your domain name, you'll get a result. I blocked out in the middle here, the domain name that I looked up just for privacy reasons. But you'll see here at the bottom of this result that the record was created on August 29th, 1995. Okay, so if you're curious about it, you can go to GoDaddy and do that. A lot of things people talk about, especially in the beginning of search engine optimization, is meta tags. Now, meta tags are important. You should definitely use them. They're not as important as they once were. That's what people used to do only for search engine optimization back in the beginning of all this. So your meta description should be 1 sentence to 1 paragraph in length. Your meta keywords should contain keywords, variations of keywords, and common misspellings. A couple of things that you should know. There was a lawsuit once where someone put in their competitor's name into their meta keywords, and that was not a good thing. So you want to stay away from that, definitely. If you want to know what your meta tags are, go to your website, go up to File, and then View Source, actually Page and then View Source, and then you'll see a whole bunch of code. And you'll see, just look for 2 words, meta description and meta keywords, and you'll see if you have any. If you don't, you should put them in. If you have them in there, make sure they're accurate. As far as your navigation, since text is so important, I recommend not using images for your navigation. Navigation should be text so that the search engines can read them. Navigation should point to the main keyword buckets. And if you decide to use graphic navigation, be sure to add alt tags to describe what the text says, because the search engines will have no clue that they're not looking at an image. They actually recognize text.